Hi everyone, Ian here. In this video I'm going to show you how to create a futuristic user interfacey HUD type thing like you see in the animation here. So this is about half an hour's work, something like that, so the tutorial will probably be about that long, broken into the different bits. So yeah, there's a lot of kind of variation of the same thing. So these three circles are actually the same project, just with a few different settings. Same for these three signally type lines. The DNA is slightly complicated and interesting in how it's set up, and I think the DNA and then these fading blocks here, the equaliser type thing, the bar chart, and then these circles at the bottom, they're all animated using maps. So I'll show you how you can very quickly create really interesting and complex looking animations just by using someone else's hard work, basically, by using different shaders and things to kind of power the animation and stuff. So yeah, let's get going. We're going to start with the circly type thing. So let's go. Okay, so let's create a circle and then let's create a cube, and we want the cube to travel around the circle. So first thing, I need a bigger circle, and I'm not going to scale the circle up. Instead, I'm going to use the radius on the make NURB circle, and I'll show you why in a moment. So if I just create a mesh network, go mesh, create mesh network. I'm going to go to the distribute node. I'm going to turn off the distance x, so we've got no distribution, all the points are on top of each other. And then I'm going to turn up the number of points to 100. Then I'm going to select the curve and then the weighter, go back to the weighter's interface, and then I'm going to click on add curve node. So this automatically connected the curve, and the reason it did that is because I had it selected when I added the curve node. If you don't have the curve selected when you add the node, all you need to do is middle mouse drag the curve into this box here, and it will be added. So that done, if I hit play, you'll see how fast our objects are moving around the curve. Now if I go back into the NURB circle here and change the radius to 1 like it was, and then scaled the curve up instead of increasing the radius, and I press play, notice how quickly our objects are flying around it, and that's because the curve length is used to work out how quickly the objects move along the curve. So we'll undo that and we will increase the radius again, and yes, so we'll get back to where we were. Okay, so back on the curve node, we've got a few settings. So here we've got animation speed, we've got the step slider, which will kind of control the distance between the objects. Now I'm just going to ignore that. I'm going to click ignore step here, which is going to fill the circle, and then we're going to use this animation speed to control how quickly our objects are moving around the circle. Or over the settings here, but we're not going to use them for now. So that done, let's go back onto the weighter, and then we'll add a noise node to the position channel. I'm going to have 0 Y amplitude, and then I'm going to give myself an X and Z amplitude of, say, something like that. Then I'm going to hit play, and there are objects moving around our curve. And yeah, okay, so there you go. So I'm going to shrink the cube slightly, like so, and then I'm going to add a trails node. So I'll add a trails node. I select the trails mesh, you see that we're creating these trails behind our points now, which is pretty cool in itself. You may want this effect instead of what I'm going to create. So on the trails node, which we can get to via the trails mesh, we have these different options here for mode. So we can have this connector point, which will just connect it to all of these things to a given point, which is controlled by this box here. We can also have connect to nearest, which will connect to the nearest number of points you have, connect each point to its nearest x number of points, and the x is set by the number you put in this box. So you can have 2 or nearest 3. So I'll just point out that if as we increase this number, some of our well, we didn't get all of the trails we would expect to get. Now bear with me, I'll show you why that is as soon as we switch to connect by distance. So connect by distance will connect the points, well, they'll attempt to connect to the points within the search radius here. So you can set the search radius smaller, larger, whatever. However, as you can see, we're not, like, the whole curve isn't filled with these trails, these connections. And the reason for that is that we have this max trail slider up at the top here. So if I was to just add an extra 0 on here, then we suddenly do get all of the points that we want. Now the reason for that is, and I will show you if I go back into trails mode here and then hit undo. If I open the UV editor, see we've got blank UVs, but as I play, you'll see that, line that down. see that all of these nice UVs have been created for our trails. So they all get nicely laid out. So you could texture this with a ramp or whatever you want to do to get different colours at the start and end of your trails. So once we've reached our maximum trail length, which is what controls the kind of the spread down the v-axis of the UVs, and the u-axis of the UVs is controlled by this max trails number, so it shrinks and grows our UVs. So yeah, that's kind of how that works, and it's just because our UVs are fixed, and so as you can have this decay trails thing. So when a trail stops moving, it will shrink gradually, and it's just so that the UVs are fixed and they don't kind of like keep moving across your texture if that's what you've got going on. So that's why we have this max trails. And yeah, it's just, I know it's a little bit of a pain, but it's great for texturing. So I'm going to go back into the connect by distance, and then I'm going to up this to something like 900, and then I'm just going to hit play, and then ta-da, that's what we've got. So if I just deselect the trails trails mesh here, you can see that we can't really see our trails at all. That's because we've got the wrong up vector in here, so I just need to change the up vector from X to Y and then increase the distance here slightly, and then you can see that we can see our trails. Now you'll notice that they're all kind of going from fat to thin, and the reason for that is a bug. Sorry about that, but what we need to do is go and fix that. So if I'm just going to turn the trail scale down a bit, and I need to go back into trails mode to change the taper curve down here, because the taper curve won't work when you're in the connect by distance or connect by points mode. It's a bug, sorry about that. So basically, having fixed the taper curve, we can now go back into connect by distance, and then we don't get this fat to thin thing going on. So and then we can just hit play, and we have our curves. So if I zoom in on these things, you'll notice they're actually just flat shapes, and this might not be what you want. So I'll quickly show you how to use a profile curve to extrude along these trails, and I'm just gonna create a circle for that. Then I'm going to go back into the trails node, and I'm going to middle mouse drag the curve there onto the profile curve slot here, and that will basically just extrude the circle along the trails there, so we can have nice round 3D shapes instead if you want. So there you go. And then the number of samples is down here, so you can have a smoother curve, or you can have a triangle if you have 3 points or whatever. So yeah, that's controlled by the curve samples down here. So that done, I think I'm just going to shrink the curve a little bit more, just because that's what I want to do. And then there you go. So here's our first element. And then what I did is I just selected the repro mesh, which is the cubes, and the trails mesh, which is obviously the trails. And then I went cache, alembic, cache, export, selection to alembic, which exported them both to alembic, and then I just imported them into the master scene, which is this thing that I showed you before. So that done, this is great, and a nice boxed off separate project or whatever. There's another way to get at the caching settings, because obviously you can create a mesh network as a repro mesh or as an instancer, and if you're creating it as an instancer, then you can't do an alembic export, just because you can't. It's like they're instances, and you can't export alembic export instances. So what you can do is, if you're not sure what you need to export as, you can select the waiter, go mash utilities, and then there's cache mesh network box, which will select your output mesh, which in this case is this repro mesh, and then it will tell you what what export you need to use. So either this alembic export or the mash caching, like Mash has a particle cacher built in. I say it has a particle cacher built in. It uses Maya's particle cacher. So when you're using instances, that's what happens, and the caching is controlled. Actually, I don't know why I'm telling you this, because I'm not going to go into it. But it's down here on the waiter in the caching, and there's this cache editor, and you can create caches down here. So yeah. Anyway, ignore everything I've just said. We have created our circle. Okay, so how do we create variations on this? Well, for one of the variations, all I did was I grabbed the curve, and then I did what I said I wouldn't do. I shrank it, and then I think I just increased the noise on the curve slightly, and that created the noisy element. And then for the other one, I changed the mode from connected by distance to connect to nearest, and then I increased the distance of the curve again, and then decreased the noise. So something like that, and then that was the third. Curve. This one down here. That's how I did that. Okay, so that's done, and let's move on. So the bar chart element, let's get started by creating a plane. I'm just going to knock the subdivisions out of it, and I'm going to change the axis from Y to Z so that it's facing us. And then I need to create a pivot point for this, so I'm going to group it, and because I want these things to scale up. So if you can see, if I in the animation here, these are scaling up from the bottom, so I want them to scale up from the bottom. So I need to create a fake pivot point for Mesh to see. So I'm just going to move the plane up inside a group. So if I just change that to half its height, change the Y to half its height. There's a video where I go through how pivot points work in Mesh, so worth watching that if you don't know what's going on at the moment. And I'm going to change this group's name to plane pivot. So, quick recap: the group is at 0, 0, 0, and then the plane is sitting underneath it. And so you see where the group's transforms are here. That's going to be the pivot point for the plane. So I then just create a mesh network. I want, say, a load more objects. Let's just increase that, say 50. And then I'm going to add an offset node to the scale channel, and I'm going to change the X offset to 0 and the Y offset to 0. So this is basically just adding to the object scale. So I can just increase this something like that, and then I'm going to, what we can do is we can use the strength map here to affect the strength of this node. I'm going to click the checkerboard here, and I'm going to add a volume noise shader. I'm going to scale the volume noise up a lot, like so, and then I'm going to, on the offset scale node, I'm going to go through to the strength map here, and I'm going to change the frequency to something like 2. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this 3D projection node, I'm going to animate it moving in the Z, and you can see what's going on here. It creates this really cool, interesting, complex animation for free. We're just basically using someone else's hard work. So let's just change the Z position to 0 at frame 0, and then on frame 120 I'll move that to, say, there or something. Press save, and then when I press play, we've got this cool animation. So really, really quick, just that's how you just create another element. So that done, again, I would then export this to Alembic, like that, export to Alembic, and then import it into my master scene, or yeah, do what you like. So on to the next bit. Okay, in this one, let's do the these blocks that are fading, their color fading. These ones up here. Another really quick and easy one. So I won't even bother changing the orientation of the plane here. Let's just get this done. We'll create a mesh network, and I'm going to go and create a grid like so, and I'm going to increase the existence quite a lot. Say 60 in there. No, not 360, 60. And then I'll just increase the number of objects we have along there. And then let's get another couple in the height. And then I'm just going to go back into our original plane, and I'm going to scale it sideways, and then maybe make it thinner, like that. Okay, so that done. Well, let's use color per vertex to animate this. Animate the colors. So we need to do 3 things. We need to select the node, select the mesh, sorry, and go into the modeling menu set and go mesh display, toggle display colors attribute. Then we need to go to the repro node and turn on color per vertex, which shows us our black colors per vertex. And then we need to go into the color node and turn on the color node. And then obviously we can set our colors, so we can set this to be something like red, and then we could do random hue or whatever, and then saturation and blah, and we could just like change the random seed to get a cool fun effect. I say cool fun effect, that's rather nauseating. So that done, that not done, let's click the checkerboard here, and what we'll do is again we'll create our old favourite volume noise. So I'm going to grab the volume noise and scale it up, and you can see it there. And again, all I need to do is animate this moving down, so moving through our objects there. So if I set a key there and then set another key, something like there. If I just hit rewind and play, you can see the animation happening there. So back on our color node, if I go through to the shader here, what I can do is in the color balance, I'm going to change the color gain to be this kind of bluey color, and then that will give us the kind of the color that we wanted here. Okay, so here's a catch. We can't export this to Alembic because Alembic Export in Maya does not support animating CV colors in Maya 2016.5 R2, which is the first version of Maya that Mash is bundled with. So this isn't supported. So what you've got to do is actually send this to the renderer as it is. So this is like what we've done here is completely procedural, doesn't need to be cached out. It can just go through to a renderer and it will render fine. Like different parts of the scene rendering on different computers is fine. There will be no problem with that. So just something to be aware of, that you basically, when you're animating color per vertex, you can't bake it to Alembic unless you have, say, an in-house or like third-party Alembic plugin or something like that, and then it may well be supported. So that's just something to be aware of. Yes, there we go. So I'd import this into my master scene as a reference and go from there. So that is those color chips changing color. So on to the next bit. In this video, let's do the these kind of graphic equalizer thing with the bits turning on and bits turning off. So again, let's start with the plane, and I'm just going to turn the subdivisions down just because that helps the repro node out. We don't need those subdivisions. Then I'm going to create a mesh network, and I will give us, say, well, actually what I'll do is I'm going to make the cube, the plane, sorry, a bit thinner and a bit taller, like something like that. Okay, so then we're going to use a mesh node called the replicator, and the replicator is pretty cool in that it has a very similar effect to if you just select this mesh and then go create mesh network. It has a very similar effect to that, but it has some cool things built into it that we can make use of. So if we go add replicator, then if I just turn this replicants count up, you see that we're creating lots and lots and lots of the same thing. Now what's great is if I go back onto the distribute node and I adjust the distribution here, is everything kind of gets carried over very nicely, and yeah, we've got this it's all very procedural workflow, and yeah, I don't need to explain that to you. So I can change this distance if I want to, and then I can increase this number of replicants until I get something I'm happy with. And then if you notice that what the strength does in the replicator is it turns off the replicants. So we also have this random strength which will turn them off bit by bit, and the step strength, which turn them off one by one. So that done, let's use the map again, and so what we're going to do is I'm going to create a map, and then just for a change I'll create exactly the same volume noise, and God, like a broken record, it's just so useful. So we'll scale it up, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to animate this moving through. And so that's how I created this effect. In fact, I'm just going to stop it there. You don't need to see me animating this. It's just that's how I did it. And okay. So it's just one of the really cool things about the replicator node is that it basically turns off objects. When you have a map in the strength map, it basically turns off objects, which is really cool. Yes. So that done. Let's move on to something else. Okay, I'm going to tackle DNA now. Probably several different ways to do this. However, the way I have chosen is also using the replicator node, like I showed you in the last little section. So for this bit, I'm going to create a sphere. Ooh, because obviously this is rotating, it's going to be 3D. So, whereas everything else we've been doing is a very 2D flat effect, this is actually going to be 3D. So I'm just going to turn the subdivisions down on the sphere, and I don't quite know why I think I'm going to do this using the repro node, and you don't have to do this using the repro node if you don't want to, but because I'm doing color per vertex here, which is something that's only supported in the repro node, the Maya particle instancer does not support color per vertex, which is why I'm doing this with the repro node. It's always a good idea to give it the repro node as few polygons as you can, because it can generate hundreds of thousands of polys in your scene, and obviously that's slow to do. So the lighter the mesh you can give it, the better. Or you can use proxies and things to make it faster. So I won't go into that in this video. There'll be another one for that. So let's go. Let's create a mesh network like so. So I've got these 10 points or something like that. Let's just make this sphere slightly smaller like that. Actually, I want this to what I want to do is I'm going to get this row of objects here, and I'm going to rotate them, but I want them to rotate around the middle, so I want them to twist. Well, I can't rotate a repro mesh, can I? I want them to kind of like twist to make the helix shape here, but as you can see, they're kind of rotating from the middle, and when I just do a linear distribution, they rotate from one end. So how do you get them from the middle? Well, I could either add 2 transform nodes, which is boring, why would you do that? Or I could just change this to a grid distribution and do a kind of a one-dimensional grid distribution like that. So if I just change the number of points, something like that. Now, obviously, the pivot's in the middle of the mesh network, and so when you rotate these, they will spin from the center. So let's create a load more of these to spin. So it's a replicator again, and I'm just going to create a load of replicants like that, and maybe a few more. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the rotation settings here, and I'm going to rotate the z-axis something like, should we try 720, something like that. And there you go. So that is pretty cool, and yes, that's all good. I think I'm going to make these spheres slightly smaller, and then I'm going to do, I'm not going to animate them yet, but I'm going to show you how to duplicate a mesh network. So to duplicate a mesh network, you need to select the output, so the output mesh. So this is either the repro mesh, or it's the my particle instance. So you select, depends which mode you're in. So if you're in mesh mode, which is the default, select the repro mesh, select it in the viewport, and then go edit duplicate special, and then we're going to go to the option box here. I'm going to go reset just to get everything back to the beginning, and then I'm going to click duplicate input graph and then hit duplicate special, and this is created as a second mesh network, which is exactly the same as the first. However, on this second mesh network, I'm going to make the sphere bigger. You see the bigger sphere, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the, on the distribute node on the grid here, I'm going to change the number, the grid X from 12. I'm going to change it to 2. So we only have two. Steps in our x-axis. You can see the big spheres here. I'm going to increase the distance, so these kind of sit outside our main bit of DNA. Oh, I think I need a coffee. And then, so this done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a transform node. So I'm going to add a transform node to our first mesh network, and then I'm going to right click and controller null and go create. And what this is going to do is it's going to create this control null, which I can then rotate. So this is how I kind of animated the DNA by doing that. So I also want the other mesh network to move, and so in order to move mesh network you have to create a transform node, so let's create a transform node. But instead of creating a separate controller null, I'm going to middle mouse drag the first controller null onto this second one. So both are now being controlled by this controller null, so if I can just do anything, and they're both moving at the same time. So yeah, so that's how you can move a mesh network around your scene or whatever. So that all done. Now let's texture our spheres. So I'm just going to go right click, surface shader, and then change that to that crazy blue. But actually on the first repro mesh here, I'm going to use the color per vertex again, and so let's go into the repro node for this network, go color per vertex, then I'm going to go to the color node and turn colors on, then I'm going to select the mesh and go display colors attribute here, which shows us our textures. No, it doesn't. Why? Think what's going on? If I just select this and then go into its object display and use, no, what is it? No, it's mesh component display colors. Oh, it's on. Material blend override answer. I don't know. Maybe if I give this sphere, if I send it back to the default material, what would happen then? Yes, so sending it back to the default material appears to have made the color per vertex work. Well, we've both learned something there. So that done, let's go back into the color node. Sorry about that, everyone. Guess I've still got stuff to learn as well. And let's just add a shader, and then I think what I added is, just for giggles, I added a Mandelbrot 3D texture, because why not? So I'm gonna scale this up, and then I think I put it into the middle of the into the DNA strand here, and then I went with Mandelbrot, and then I think I just changed things, and then went with the settings. Yep. So there you go. And because this is a 3D texture, when you rotate through it, these things change, so you can get some cool effects. I think I've probably gone too crazy with the shader mashing there, or bashing I should say. But yeah, that's kind of how I created the same effect. And again, because we're using color per vertex, we can't export this to Alembic. We have to, and because we're using animating color per vertex, we have to import this into our final scene as a reference. So yeah, there you go. So pretty cool, and like I said, I have overcooked the Mandelbrot texture there, but anyway, it's still pretty cool. I like it just because it's has crazy fun things going on. Yeah, look at that. Anyway, so yeah, have fun, and yes, on to the next bit. So in typical me fashion, we're going to sprint to the finish line by I'm just going to show you everything else that's in that HUD, because it's all so simple. So we have this background grid, which is literally, I actually don't think I'm going to show you how to make this background grid because it's so self-explanatory. It's just a cube, and then with a grid distribution, that is it. So that done. I will show you this bit here, and then I will show you. Well, this is just a load of circles with noise on it again, so I don't want to bore you with that, but I'll show you the join the dots thing, this signal thing here, and yeah, so I'll show you this, these kind of moving rectangles. So let's do that, and I'm just going to make these kind of long, and I'll make them slightly thin. Okay, right, so create mesh network, and create lots of these objects, and then I'm going to turn the distribution down to 0, and I'm going to add a noise node to the position channel, and then I'm going to change the amplitude X to something like 40, and then leave Y and Z to 0. And then when I hit play, you see these things just moving along a line like that, which is pretty much what we have in the final animation. Maybe the frequency is lower. But then the other thing that we have is some noise on the scale. So if I just change the again Y and Z scale to 0, and just press play here, you see that we've got changing thicknesses on the scale of the objects here. So maybe the original plane wants to be slightly thinner or something like that. But yeah, there you go. So that's basically how we made that. How I made that element. Next up, I'll show you the signally kind of zigzaggy line type things, which is really easy. So I'm just going to hide that repro mesh, and then, well, actually no, I'll just do a new scene. Why not? So to do this, it's really dead simple. I'll just create a mesh network. In fact, you could actually create a mesh network with nothing selected, but it's kind of easy just to see what's going on if you've got something selected. Then I created just a linear distribution with lots of points, and then added a noise shader to the position channel with only Y noise like that. So I just amplitude slightly, and then when I hit play, you get this. Change the frequency to get something a bit noisier, something like that. Okay, and then you just add a trails node. So we add a trails node and do join the dots as the method. So our trail has appeared. There it is, side on. I think what we need to do is go and adjust this taper curve, which we can. Great stuff. Like that. And then it's still facing the wrong way, so we need to play with our up vector. Do I want it to face Z? I do. I think there you go. So, and then when I press play, you got the kind of this thing animating, and then obviously you can get rid of the cubes if you want to, just by either removing them from the repro node or just hiding the repro node. And there you go. That's how I made those elements. And then it's just variations on the number of points, the frequency of the noise, and all that kind of thing. Actually, it's probably worth mentioning a little trick there is with the noise shader here, in that for one of these I wanted really low frequency noise, which actually is impossible to get without reducing the step. So I wanted to reduce the step and have this low frequency. So I want something like this, that's right. So something like this, and then have, when I press play, this is going really, really slowly, and there's no way to speed this up really, because as soon as you increase the frequency, you're going to get something noisier, and maybe I don't want to have, maybe I don't want the to have this kind of effects. Basically, I like the look of this, I just wanted it to be faster, and the way that you would do that, remember you can add more points to get something smoother. So if I add more points in here, and then just reduce the frequency even more. So I like the look of this, but I just want it to move faster. What you can do is disconnect time here, and set a keyframe of say 0 there, and then set a keyframe of say 1000 here, so you can actually keyframe time, so you can speed things up that way. And then when I press play, I've got something moving faster. Of course, I can actually just times that by 10 to get something. Okay, that was too much, way too much. Okay, so there you go. So that's kind of how I did one of the other elements. So worth showing. So there's one more tip trick kind of thing to show you, which is actually not related to the HUD at all, but it's kind of cool, and that's going to be looping this noise. So the way that we do that in MASH, there are two ways to loop noise. So if I just create a MASH network and I add a noise node to position channel, I'm just going to whack up the amplitudes here, and we have a noise type called noise looping. So the loop time, the number of how long it is before the loop starts again, is set in this roll out here, the Perlin loop settings, and by default it's set to the same length as the default Miocene length, which is 120 frames. So if I just play through this, you'll see that our loop is seamless. So as our time goes back to the beginning, we have looping noise, which is great. Okay, so that's one way to do looping noise in MASH. The other way is pretty cool, just because you get access to different noise types that can all be looping. So let's create a MASH network. And if we add a offset node instead of a noise node, so I'm just going to add offset to position, and I'm going to put 10 in here. And then what you can do is, with a strength map, right, let's add our old friend volume noise. I'm going to scale this up a lot, and then I'm going to move it away from the center. So I'm going to move that away from the center, and then I'm going to go back into the noise settings and just turn it to frequency. Put the frequency down to something really low so that it's not going to be too noisy. Then I'm going to group this projection texture. So I've got the projection texture here, the place 3D texture node, and I'm going to group it. And I'm just going to call this projection rotator. Then what I can do is I can rotate this, right? So I can't just rotate it where it is. I need to move it away from the world center. So I'm going to move it off this world center. And then I can just set two keyframes. So I'm going to set a keyframe at frame. I'm going to set a keyframe at frame 1, and then on frame 121, I'm going to set a keyframe of 360 degrees, so it ends up back where it started. So notice that was on frame 121. Then I'm going to change my time, the end of my playback range to 120. Right, and then I'm going to press play, and you'll see that our noise is looping. It's probably I could probably do with scaling this up even more, just to so it doesn't so you can tell it's looping. But that's really kind of what goes on behind the scenes when we do the looping noise inside the noise node. It's effectively the same kind of thing. So yeah, there you go, and that's how you can do a looping noise without the noise shader. And of course, you have the advantage of being able to use the different types of noise on the that you get with the noise shaders. So that is that, and I think that's the end of the HUD tutorial. So I think I've just run over about half an hour, but yeah, so you can see how you can create all sorts of cool and fun and interesting effects very, very quickly. I hope you found that useful.